Every single season, the NFL reminds us that there is no sport with more value placed on a group's collective effort over the skill of one individual player.
I always believe that football is the ultimate team sport.
If you didn't have a football team, it's the ultimate team sport.
Football is the ultimate team sport for me.
Even when it seems that it's all come down to one player in one moment, there were still 59 minutes before that where their teammates could have changed the outcome. That has always been the beauty of football. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, who wants to argue about who's most important?
I got Brock Purdy.
Tannehill's played fantastic. He could honestly be...
Of course, if Drew Brees stumped up the joint for the last 5 weeks.
That Tom Brady is the MVP right now today.
At some point, you start watching
Micah Parsons.
Oh.
No matter the answer you seek, all roads lead us back to the early NFL, a loosely structured pit of death where players jump teams between games. Either interpretation of that works. That is, until one man named Joe Carr rose to power in the 1920s with big ideas on how to strike down rule breakers and build the NFL into a respectable pro league. Here he is pictured on the Pro Football Hall of Fame website with, Oh, no, that's really on there. For his efforts as commissioner, Carr would be posthumously honored in 1939 with the naming of the Joe F. Carr Trophy, a symbolic recognition of one man's ability to impose his will on an entire league, the most valuable player. Thing is, a watch company had already been handing out MVPs the previous 2 seasons, so the NFL said, actually, that's ours, retroactively renamed the previous year's award, and just deleted the first one from record. Why did they do this? I have no idea. Politics aside, the first official MVP was Mel Hein in 1938, a center/linebacker hybrid whose defining quality was that he refused to leave the field. So when we debate about what the award has become, this is what they took from you. Don Hutson played receiver, and he won back-to-back MVPs in 1941 and 42. All he had to do was invent the position and lap the field before anyone could figure out what was going on. The beautiful chaos of the Joe F. Carr Trophy didn't even last a full decade before the NFL just gave up on it in 1947 and never handed out an official MVP award again, which put the concept in kind of a weird limbo. No official recognition, just a handful of publications that picked up the slack and started handing out their own independent awards. Of course, when we talk about the NFL MVP today, we're talking about the one handed out by the Associated Press, the official one, right? Well, we were lied to. The NFLPA-CBA, which is a collection of 8 letters, doesn't value any accolade above any other from its listed veteran media sources, not even AP, a fact that the Twitter account for Pro Football Writers of America is always excited to remind you of. So why is Miles Teller in a suit giving out this one? Well, over time, it just settled into this de facto role, and when the AP signed a deal to be presented at NFL Honors beginning back in 2011, that was the end of all debate. Most debate. Because of the AP's independent status, that means that the history books say goodbye to the Joe F. Carr Trophy and any award before 1957's AP award, then called the Most Outstanding Player before it was retroactively considered the very first MVP years later. We're doing a lot of retroactive naming, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with it. But every year we argue to no end about what MVP has devolved into, what its deficiencies are, why the voters are morons for not being unanimous, so who's actually deciding on this thing? The AP's voting block today is made up of a rotating list of 50 prominent figures in NFL coverage, former players, sports writers, and representatives from all forms of legacy media. It is kind of weird that the list isn't required to involve a voter from every NFL market, just because there are voters that are expressly from one market. If you're going to have every voter focused on national coverage, that's cool, but if you're going to include even one voter from a specific market or team, then you gotta have all 32 for the sake of a level field. We'll get back to the modern award later, but if there's one thing we know historically about the AP's voters, it's that they very much enjoy convention. From the beginning, the MVP has been an offensive award, given to a standout quarterback, or less often running back of a playoff team. 2 positions, and they're the ones that touch the ball the most. This gives the NFL's MVP a unique position in sports awards of being a complete tease, that technically any position can win, but not really, and especially not anymore. So the award's nearly 7-decade ledger acts as a quick who's who in the history of NFL offense, a parade of household names mixed in with the occasional trivia answer. And given just how rarely the Associated Press has deviated from their tried and true formula, the rare exceptions end up telling us the most about how willing voters are to stretch their definition. Jim Brown's 1957 win would be the first and only MVP ever awarded to a rookie, and his dominance through the 1960s as a pure runner coincided with Johnny Unitas' rise as a pure passer. Those two combined for 6 out of the first 10 MVPs the Associated Press ever gave out, and since that first decade, only 4 other players have ever won the award 3 or more times. One of Unitas' 3 MVP wins in 1967 even broke the recognized mold of needing to make the playoffs, but in Johnny's defense, the 67 Colts had the best record in the NFL at 11-0-2 heading into their final game of the season. Due to newly instituted tiebreakers, their first and only loss to the Rams knocked them out of the postseason entirely, undefeated to eliminated in 4 quarters. The only other player to be named MVP while missing the playoffs rushed for a record 2,003 yards in 14 games. And in O.J. Simpson's defense, the wildest deviations to occur have come when a non-offensive player is named most valuable. It hasn't happened in nearly 40 years, and I'm gonna venture that it never will again, but it did happen 3 times. Alan Page at defensive tackle first broke through to win MVP in 1971 as an interior wrecking ball for a historically good Vikings defense. And Lawrence Taylor would win in 1986 with possibly the greatest season ever for a defensive player, let alone a linebacker. The fact that only 2 defensive players have ever won the honor is made even funnier by the fact that a kicker has also won MVP. The 1982 NFL season was shortened by player strike to only 9 games, and Mark Mosley posted a 20-for-21 field goal total during the regular season. Incredibly impressive for the time, but also probably not what anyone would consider the engine of a team with one of the best offensive lines ever and the #1 scoring defense. Also, he missed 3 extra points. Look, I'm all for giving kickers their flowers, but given that the Chargers quarterback Dan Fouts was on historic pace, I get why there were theories spawned that the AP's voters were essentially firing back at the players for striking by naming a kicker their MVP. You know who got it right and didn't throw a tantrum? Pro Football Writers of America. Want more MVP controversy driven by labor disputes? I do. In 1987, the NFL would see its final season to date where a strike interrupted normal play. This time, there was only 1 less game played in total, but 3 of them were played by replacement players, so the stats of players who didn't cross the picket line were only accumulated over 12 games. The winner of the AP MVP award was John Elway, and it wasn't as though you can't make an argument for him. The contentious bit is that in his 12 games, Jerry Rice posted 65 catches for 1,078 yards and 22 receiving touchdowns. Now, conversations about the definition of valuable when it comes to NFL MVP are very interesting and thorough, with plenty of variables to weigh against. But as a fan who just wants to see greatness appreciated, come on, man, that was our best shot. Want to guess who did name Jerry Rice MVP in 1987? You're right. 2 MVP awards have been shared, 1997's between Brett Favre and Barry Sanders, and 2003's between Peyton Manning and Steve McNair. Ties like that make for an interesting historical footnote, even if they're a little bulky, but we probably won't ever see one happen again. 2022 saw the AP change their voting system from one single first-place vote to a ranked choice system that awards points based on placement in a top 5. The only possible downside is that this allows a player that didn't receive the most first-place votes to win the award. We just saw it happen with 2023's Comeback Player of the Year, and may God help us if it ever happens with MVP. That said though, only 2 winners in MVP history have ever done so unanimously, which seems low until you think about how difficult it is to get 50 people to agree on anything. Tom Brady in 2007 and Peyton Manning in 2004 and 2013 famously eviscerated the concept of defense, but each time had a rogue voter leave them 1 tally short. LaDainian Tomlinson and Adrian Peterson both put up video game numbers and still needed some extra juice just to barely squeeze into the window for a running back to win MVP. As NFL offense has shifted due to rule changes and the scheme evolutions that followed, we've reached a point where it seems silly to consider any position other than quarterback could ever be named most valuable again. Before the 2010s, quarterbacks had never won more than 5 years in a row, and now they've won all of the past 11, even with absurd broken seasons like J.J. Watt in 2014 failing to generate any real momentum. We've seen an increase to the value of what was already the most valuable position in football, and the voters' formula has hardened into concrete. 9 of those last 11 MVPs awarded were the quarterback of the team with the best record in the NFL, point blank, and it's difficult to see that changing in the years to come given how heavily team success has always weighed in the minds of MVP voters. 2023's MVP race saw this play out to the letter, as MVP odds traded hands from one QB with the best record in football to the next to the next. And even though it was a down year for signal callers across the board, there was never a feeling the award could go in any other direction. Now, I don't want anyone thinking this is some kind of veiled critique of Lamar Jackson winning MVP, because I think he was definitely the right choice given the award's current form. But if there's one central problem with today's MVP award, it's the fact that because it's open to all positions, it makes the award for Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year feel like some kind of consolation prize. That's why I think we should go full circle. Remember when I mentioned the first ever AP award was actually called Most Outstanding Player? Why did they change that? To fit in with other leagues? Because MVP sounds cooler than MOP? That's true. That's actually pretty compelling. But if you remove the valuable qualifier, instantly the field opens up to any individual that stands head and shoulders above their peers, regardless of their position. Quarterbacks could and would still win a significant amount of awards, but during the years where history is made at another position, there's no reason those players would need to be gatekept from the sport's highest individual honor. If that big of a change is a bridge too far, we can all at least agree that the most valuable player in the league is by necessity always going to be a quarterback. So we can stop pretending and just make the award quarterback only. In return, quarterbacks are disqualified from winning Offensive Player of the Year, which I'm already in favor of because it makes my eye twitch whenever MVP and Offensive Player of the Year are given to the same quarterback. I get that you can make an argument for why, but please, stop. And while we're at it, why did they get rid of the Offensive Line Award? Haven't we done enough big man erasure? Look, I'm far from the first person to suggest these ideas, but any change to the MVP award would be significantly less annoying than our current charade where we pretend this is the year a non-QB can win it, just have it go to one of the two one-seed quarterbacks. And remember, the AP isn't beholden to the NFL. Other publications have made changes at their own discretion, and so can they. Regardless of who's handing out the awards, AP, PFWA, PFF, PF Changs, all of them just stand to serve as a reminder of a moment in time. They're important to players in terms of contract negotiations and legacies, but for fans, they're a quick snapshot you can remember an entire season by, long after the years before and after have blurred into one another. That's why people care about these things so much. You want to see history reflect what you saw out on that field. After all, a world where no one thought to recognize the indestructible Mel Hein is even darker than the one we live in. Before we head out of here, I want to take a quick second and thank Football Head Coach for helping me make this video happen. There are plenty of football games out there, but Football Head Coach takes a different approach from most of them and actually focuses on what I think is the most interesting aspect of these games, which is building up your team and watching it get better over time. It's licensed by the NFLPA, so you're improving your roster with real players, and you're able to dive in and customize your team's strategy and formations to your strengths before you let the games play out and see where you gotta rethink. I got this beautiful shiny J.K. Dobbins card, and now my team doesn't pass. We play the game the way our forefathers intended us to play it. Right now, they've rolled out Team of the Year packs, which give the opportunity to take the players that perform best this past season and build your roster out around them. If any of this sounds like fun or worth checking out for a few minutes, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen now to download Football Head Coach and start building your own team. Here is my user ID as well if you want to add me on there. Just know that our locker room is united and our motor's relentless. So one final thank you to Football Head Coach, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you, I love you, take care.